Good evening. Welcome to the Wyndham-Raymond School District Board of Directors meeting. It is Wednesday, February 28th, 2024. It is 6:30 p.m. and we are in the Jordan Small Middle School gym. May I have a roll call, please?
Christina Small.
Here.
Jessica Bridges.
Here.
Jenny Butler.
Here.
Jody Carroll.
Here.
Caitlin Downs.
Here.
Marge Gaboni.
Here.
Joe Kellner. Shar Jewell.
Here.
Mike McClellan. Lily Nugent.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any adjustments to the agenda?
No, we don't have any changes to the agenda tonight.
Okay, and now it's time for public input, but there is no public, so we will move on to superintendent's report.
Well, welcome back from break, everyone. I know in talking to some families and some parents, we know we had some kids that were excited to be back and others that were so-so about coming back. But it's interesting being late February and having to feel like March, April outside without a whole lot of snow. And I know still we have some kids that are holding out for maybe a snow day. But at this point in the weather pattern, we'll have to wait and see and what happens with that. A couple things that I want to share tonight is that, first of all, board is kicking off budget. And for the public who may be watching this live right now or watching this in the future, between now and the second week of April, the board will be working through the budget. In fact, tonight it transfers from being the superintendent's budget to the board's budget. And we'll have the opportunity to go through all the different cost centers. Next week, I believe we have central office that will be presenting their budgets. So I'll have an opportunity to work through that process. I'm excited to announce something that we've never had before at Wyndham High School, which is that we actually have our first state champion girls hockey team, where two of our hockey athletes who play at a co-op with Chevrolet won a state championship last week. And so they will have their own banner now in the Wyndham High School gym. It's just a sport we've never had and never offered, and to have them win a state championship in a co-op is absolutely outstanding. I know talking to Rich this week, he said, you know, do I put up a banner that's maroon with a little bit of the purple for Chevrolet? And I said, no, we don't honor Chevrolet in the gym, but you know, just an exciting thing for those young ladies and the work that they did. Also, congratulations to our girls basketball team, who I know lost in their first playoff game up in Bangor, had an outstanding showing. We have two wrestlers that will be participating in New England's coming up. I don't know if it's this weekend coming up or the weekend after, as well as we have some individuals who qualified for New England's through our winter track. So some kids that are really moving forward. And of course, boys basketball will be playing Saturday night at 8:30 for the AA state championship. And it's interesting that Wyndham is Northern Maine champion. Which sounds a little odd, but and Gorham's the Southern Maine champion, and that dividing line is the river down in South Wyndham between North and South. So it's going to be an exciting event. And I know we'll probably have the Civic Center packed, but congratulations to our boys. I think this is the farthest that our boys basketball team has ever made it. We also have one-act plays, our one-act team led by CJ, who's helping us out with all of our tech here. One Act is going to do their first performance for the community. Unfortunate timing for them is that they're doing it at 6:30 or 6 or 6:30 on Saturday night. And Saturday night probably is going to have a lot of people heading to the Civic Center for basketball. But you will also have the chance to catch that one-act play on 1 o'clock the following Saturday, when Wyndham High School is going to be hosting the regional one-act plays, and schools from all over our area will be coming in to perform. So an exciting time. They're doing a radio show, quite the elaborate set that they have set up. So a bunch of fun. That's at 1 o'clock the following Saturday. So a lot of activities going on. Winter sports will be winding down here soon. In a couple of weeks here, we'll have spring sports up and running. And obviously with a winter this year with not a lot of snow, we'll probably have kids outside early.
Okay, next up is board roundtable. Anybody have anything they'd like to share? Go ahead, Roger.
Most about that. First, we had, for the other one, we did have vocational meeting February 8th, WRBC and PAS, and Christina joined us there. By the way, they have like the best cooks in that place. So when that comes out, there wasn't a lot on the agenda because the director and the folks from PAS had to go to a conference. So it was done by WRBC for both of them, but the majority of it was around the visitations and how well they've been going. And there wasn't a lot of major things. When the official minutes come out, I will send them to everybody so that they have it. The other thing is, Jordan Small Middle School, April 10th. That's Wednesday between 6 and 8 is having an open house, which is really exciting. I think they've been talking about it for a while. And I only know because I talked to Michelle before and said, when you finally get around to it, let me know. So she called me today and it was, hopefully she put something out officially, but you know, everybody is invited. I told her the sad part of this whole thing is, and it's on our calendar, it's tentative, and I hope it stays tentative, that we could possibly have a board meeting that same evening, which I hope we don't need, so we can all go to that open house, because I'd really like to support them. And I think that's all I've got.
Anyone else? Go ahead, Lillian.
On February 13th, the National Honor Society collaborated with the Red Cross and the project manager, Tim Hinman, and we were able to donate at least 15 whole blood and 2 power red units, which basically saved 17 lives. So I just want to thank everyone in that community that participated in that, because that's fully just all students and staff within Windham High School. And we actually had a really high show rate, which was 94%, where the average is around 85 to 90. So that was really impressive for the Red Cross as well.
Awesome. Anyone else? Okay, we'll move on to committee reports. Finance?
We have not met recently.
Okay, facilities?
We did meet. We met on February 7th. It was a brief meeting. And we did a site walk. There was a piece of property that the district is considering buying, and more information will be coming out on that as it gets closer. And that was an update. And there was an update on middle school, but there always is. And of course, Chris always gives us an update on middle school, where it is in the middle school.
Okay, policy. So we met on the 26th. Seems like a long time ago, but it was not. Our agenda, just a quick reminder for the public, is available on the website under board subcommittees and policy committee. We're continuing our work through the list. We have 34 identified policies. We're on number 5, 6, and 7 on that list. So ripping through them. And tonight we're bringing forward 4 policies, 2 of them in the IJJ category. The other 2 are in the J policies regarding students. And we'll see the exhibits and regulations with those that we discussed at our last workshop around the IJJ policies. And we started our work around JICK, CDA yesterday, and updated the agenda accordingly. So you're going to see policies coming regularly from us around the J's, around the students. So I'll save the rest of the comments for the work that we're doing on the policies tonight. And we're going to meet again on March 11th. We're on a 2-week cadence now. Sorry, Jess. We met every week last year, sometimes multiple times, but we'll do every 2 weeks. And so we're about 20% through. So we'll keep going. Hopefully we can get through 2 or 3 each meeting. We're doing some meet and consults on those, so it takes some time and coordination. But we want to get our good look on them. The ones that we were looking at yesterday were more than 12 years old since they had been looked at. So we want to make sure we continue to work on those policies.
Can I just speak to one thing on finance, which first of all, I just want to say thank Shar. And I should have brought this up in the finance report. Thanks, Shar, for helping us with the connection to Central Maine Power, because one of the things that was holding up our final audit was a payroll certification from the Central Maine Power, which we received at the end of last week. So we finally have that in hand. Thank you, Shar, for helping us with that connection. We anticipate that we will have the audit wrapped up soon, in which we'll be bringing finance back together to review that final piece. But I just wanted to say thank you to Shar, and we'll get a finance meeting going soon. But that was key to closing out our audit, and it's nice to finally have that in hand and just be done and be closed. So thanks.
Curriculum?
Feels like forever ago because we had our workshop, but we met on February 5th and it included an update on the planning of the 2 middle school staff coming together for the future site. Administrators from JSMS and WMS provided a review of the work in the past, this year, and what they plan for future years. These notes can be found in the minutes as part of the curriculum website. Christine Hessler also provided us with an update on the work staff are engaged in for the art and music with the new Maine Learning Results staff. They are meeting to update their curriculum guides, which will be posted this summer. And our next meeting, I think, is in April because of all the conferences in March.
Thank you. Moving on to report of the secretary. May I have a motion, please?
I move to approve the minutes from the January 17th, 2024 meeting.
Second. Thank you. All those in favor? Motion carries. Can I have another motion?
Sure. I move to approve the minutes from the January 31st, 2024 meeting.
Second. All those in favor? Motion carries. Okay, next item is the fiscal year 2024-25 district budget presentation.
And for board members, in your packet, you have a copy of the slides that I'm going to be going over tonight. I am going to go down to the floor because I want to make sure that what's here is projected to the public. I know Gary's going to be showing those, so have an opportunity. But for board members, I know it's a little awkward in this room. You can't see the screen. So what's on the screen is what's in front of you, I promise. So a chance, I'm just. I think if I move around enough, the lights will stay on because it looks like they're going down with the energy dimming. Can everyone hear me okay? Am I loud enough up there? So for board members, tonight we're starting out with, I'm sorry, Gary, I won't block. Tonight we're going to be taking a look at the 25 budget, and tonight is the night where this goes from being the superintendent's budget to the RSU 14 board budget. And just to remind everyone here, and I know we have many veteran board members, this is a process. The budget that we finish on April 10th and ultimately goes to the voters in June won't be the budget that you see tonight. This is a continuous process that we work through. And even as we work along, there's pieces of the budget that are continually adjusted. Tonight, I'm presenting version 5 to you, which means there's been 5 iterations of the budget so far. We're already working on version 6, which has some changes that have already been identified, things that we want to move within the budget. And so those pieces will be brought to you and will be shared with you as we work through the budget process. And you'll have the opportunity to hear from every single cost center in the budget. So a chance to ask questions. And if there's questions that come up in between board meetings, please feel free to shoot me an email, or same thing for public, anyone who's watching tonight, you have questions about the budget, feel free to reach out to me to send an email. The budget tonight will be, actually tomorrow morning, first thing, will be posted to the website. So if you go under the finance tab on the board, a copy of this presentation and a copy of the fine lines with all the numbers will be posted there as well. So anyone who's interested wants to take a look at that, all that information is there. So tonight is my budget presentation. Over the next 4 weeks, you'll have an opportunity to hear from the cost centers and from all the directors.
And we have built into the budget this year, or the budget timeline, you have a couple different deliberation nights. And that's a chance for board members to ask questions or to have additional presentations on things that they heard in the budget. April 10th is an important date for the board because in order to meet all of our statutory deadlines for posting, for letting people know about public meeting, we really need to have a vote on April 10th. And May 15th, it's earlier this year, is our public budget meeting, and that's the hands in the auditorium where the public will have an opportunity to listen to all the different cost centers and have the opportunity to approve those. And then finally on June 6th, that's our budget referendum. I know the public has heard me say this before, and the board has heard this before, but when you look at a budget document, and yes, we have a sizable budget in RSU 14, it's almost a $60 million budget. That budget represents our priorities for the district, because ultimately in a public entity, where you spend your money is really where you're showing the priorities. And then also, it's your policy. And if you think about it, and I think back to Don Davis, who's someone I respected a lot and learned a lot of my school finance portions, really your budget book is your school policy book, because it shows, again, where your priorities are, where it is that you want to put your spending, what are the programs that you want to support, what are the wraparound services that you're providing for your students. And in addition, it's that policy piece for what do you want for your employees, the roughly 638 individuals who work for you as a board, and how you treat them through salary and benefits and supports that you provide for them in the budget. So this is your ultimate policy document. It's one of the most important things that the board does in addition to policy, which is looking at the budget and looking how we spend our resources. One thing that does shape budget and shapes how the administrative team even looked at prioritizing the budget is our strategic plan. And it's hard to believe, but we started that in 21, it's 2024. And we have a couple of years left in the strategic plan. We've done multiple presentations on it. And specifically this year in our goals, well, first of all, before we get into that, what we're committed to is establishing a safe, supportive, and inclusive community. That's what our budget's looking to do. Developing strong partnerships, fostering learning aspirations, and really looking at engagement opportunities for students so that we want kids to be as well prepared as possible so that when they leave Wyndham High School, or in the case of Raymond Choice, whatever high school that they choose, that they're fully prepared for whatever's next, their next thing in their journey. And that we want people to be, number one, good people when they graduate, but also very well equipped for whatever their next choice might be, that they're ready for that. So our strategic plan, our budget document, all seeks to support how do we make that happen. And I thought it'd be a good opportunity to remind the board of goals for this year is that one, developing a comprehensive professional development plan placed on systemic efforts around developing an instructional framework, making sure that our teachers have the tools, the resources, the instructional strategies to create highly engaged, which means opportunities provided through the budget, and deep learning for all of our students. So that was our goal one. Goal two, which was, and look at that, I got a typo. Each school and program in RSU 14 will focus on ensuring that every student and staff member have a strong sense of belonging. We want people to feel connected to our organization and that they understand social, emotional, and academic skills needed to be a contributing member of the school. So again, I want the board to kind of think about, and even the public to think about as we have our budget discussions, how are each one of these programs that you're going to talk about, how are the positions that we're proposing, how are they going to improve academic instruction, and then ultimately, how is it going to support the needs of all of our learners? And being a public institution, we have a very wide range of learners, and we want to make sure that this budget is going to make sure that we have all those supports for our students to be successful. I thought this was a great photo to share a little bit of what RSU 14 is all about. For those of you who've been to Wyndham Middle School, this is Debbie Hall's window. And these are all former students who've left Wyndham Middle School, headed over to Wyndham High School. And as a memento, on this wall, they have left their middle school student ID. And I just thought it was such a great picture because it's so pervasive in our district. of staff members who want to take that extra step and want to have strong relationships, that want to make sure that kids feel supported, that they're loved when they're here, and that those relationships, obviously, they're not one-offs, because when you have a board like this, when you have all these different IDs that now pepper a window, it's just such a great description of what it is that we're trying to do really around goal 2, which is keeping our kids feel like they're connected, they're involved, they're engaged, they feel like when they come to school, people are there, that they care about them. And again, it's one of those things that we're looking to support within our budget. So for our budget this year, like every other year that we have challenges that happen. Unexpected things, expected things, changes that happen within our economy that we have to kind of think about or we have to budget around. And a great example there, the picture, I know board members are familiar with this, public may not. We lost the floor this year in Wyndham Primary School, right before school started. Water came down the wall, because everyone remember how much sunshine we had in August, right? It rained every day. Water came down the wall, came in, and buckled the floor. Great, insurance covered it. However, you have an expenditure, and we have an expenditure ceiling. So when it comes to the unexpected things, we now actually have to budget for an expense for a new floor to be installed next year as something that's part of our budget, because you have a revenue side, you have an expense side. So some of these challenges, open the door this year. That just means rolling over contracts to contracts, keeping the same positions, not moving anything, was 5.9%. One of the highest open the doors. I think last year we were around 4.6. And as you looked at kind of some increases that were there, and some of our challenges here, we're in the midst of negotiations with our teaching staff. And for those of you on the negotiating team, and for those of you who may have sat with us in negotiations today, we value our staff. We want to make sure that we're paying a competitive wage. We want to make sure that they have benefits that are competitive with our neighbors that are around us. And we want to make sure that our staff are valued. So right now, negotiating salaries, with doing health insurance. Other budget challenges this year, we have a funding formula in the state of Maine that is based on 2 things. One is your kid count, and we've stayed relatively stable. The other item is what's the overall valuation of your communities. Guess what? Wyndham and Raymond are places where people want to live, which means that real estate prices have outpaced state, which means valuation of both community has outpaced the state. And the formula is set up so that communities with higher need receive more money. If you're perceived to be more wealthy, you receive less. So we have those increasing valuations. We've also seen a reduction in economically disadvantaged students. Free lunch has been great, but it's also decreased the percentage of people who are applying for free reduced. And so that resulted in a significant drop for us in subsidy. The Maine Paid Leave Act, which was passed in the last legislative session. This doesn't just impact RSU 14, it impacts every single business in the state of Maine, where now there is a 1% payroll tax that is going to be for a new separate agency that will create a paid leave system across the state of Maine. We have to budget for that expense. So in this budget, which actually we're budgeting about a half year, it's close to $300,000 of expenses that we need to budget. So it's an additional budget challenge that's been added to us. Inflation of goods and services. Everyone's been to the grocery store and you know things cost more. We do 4,500 meals a day. We buy hundreds of cartons of paper, we buy all sorts of different supplies. We buy fuel oil. Just like everybody else goes to the pump, we just go there more often. And all of those things that have gone up with the energy costs. Right now paying 11 cents for electricity. I know that most households now are paying 16, 17. We were paying 6 for a number of years. We're happy to have it at 10 at the moment, maybe 9 next year. So we have those pieces. And then we know healthcare, which always seems to come in April. There's always some sort of a cost or increase that happens with our health insurance. Enrollment. Because this is, again, we look at strategic plan when we work on budgeting, and we look at enrollment to look at priorities. And if you look across our schools, Wyndham Primary School is pretty steady. But you'll see that we actually have a reduction of a teacher at Wyndham Primary School that's included in the budget this year. Raymond Elementary School is staying pretty steady, and we have a bubble that's moving through, so we're moving a teacher from one grade level to another. We have item on here which hasn't been on there in the past. We have now 16 students in pre-K partnerships, which have increased our enrollments a little bit. Jordan Small, this looks like it's going to be changing by about a student, and that's another place we're moving a classroom teacher from one grade level to the other. Wyndham Middle School, it's going to be growing a little bit, and Wyndham High School is staying pretty steady. You look at our enrollment numbers. So again, kids and valuation drive the formula. Kids have stayed pretty steady. Valuation has outpaced the state, so we know we took a loss in subsidy. So this is our budget. And again, reminder for the board becoming your budget that this is our starting point. It's actually not the highest starting point that we've been at before, but it's a $60 million budget, up 3.8 million, and 6.74% increase. If you think about a percent, is about $560,000. So reducing the budget by a percent reduces it by 560,000. But it gives you an idea of where we are and where we're starting. And as you go through the cost centers, you'll have an opportunity to hear some of the items that are actually driving that increase. It's a slide that we've included every single year, and something that's happened this year, and I think it's more dramatic than where we've been in the past. This is the average per pupil operating costs for each of the school districts that are our surrounding neighbors. And we used to be right around state average. We've actually dropped about $1,200 below state average on our per pupil expenditures. But if you look here, Falmouth being our highest neighbor at $21,600 per pupil, RC 14 at $16,200, and just even Gorham, who's just across the bridge, it's about $700 more per pupil, and then SAD 6, which is about $400 less than where we're at. So something that's happened over time with, yes, it's been with efficiencies, and last year we were fortunate to have a budget that came in with a 0% health insurance increase. But if you look at our per pupil costs, even our per pupil costs compared to state average, we're down a little bit lower. And so also maybe as we go into negotiations, why some of our numbers may seem like they're up a little bit as compared, because where we're bidding per pupil is a little bit lower. So significant budget changes, and this is where you're going to hear in the cost centers. And believe it or not, I know some of you have been here long enough to go with more significant numbers of FTEs. We're only talking about the equivalent of about 3 FTEs difference between the budget this year and the budget next year. And I think what you'll see in here is that where a position has been added, we've looked to where we can reallocate a position. So first of all, under Wyndham High School, BAR is a teaming program where now we have one team at the freshman level at Wyndham High School. We're looking to have all freshmen next year in a teaming structure. And Ryan's going to come in a couple of weeks, do a presentation on BAR, what that teaming structure looks like, and then we'll have an opportunity to talk through what it means for students. Already seeing a huge impact in that one freshman team of students in attendance, in behavior, and even some academic pieces with it. So it'll be a good opportunity to hear on that day a little bit more about that. Raymond Elementary, 0.2 of a school counselor. That's actually to bring someone who's there 4 days a week to 5 days a week. Primary school is a reduction of a classroom teacher. So in technology, we have one grade level of computers, and that's just part of our purchasing cycle. And if you remember under the MLTI program, that even with that one grade level of computers, there's a direct subsidy that comes from the state of Maine that pays for roughly a third to half of the cost of those computers. Wyndham Middle School is in need of a 6th grade teacher. And when Greg comes, he'll talk about that. In transportation, the number of students on vans has increased. The number of students with needs to go in a van. Also adding 2 additional bus aids. to make sure that bus drivers have the support that they need on some of the runs that are currently taking place. Also, we have the addition here of a social worker substance counselor. And really, there's quite an offset to that, to what we're paying now for an independent contractor for substance counseling services. And so looking to bring in a social worker who can help support that. Manchester Elementary has a reduction of a teacher. And then district-wide, this is removing the school nutrition transfer. And for those of you who've been doing budgets long enough, remember that the board always budgeted an amount of money that if nutrition didn't make all the money they needed to in a year, that you could do a transition over with free meals. Jeannie has plenty of money to pay the individuals that she has, so we do not have to do that transfer. So that's a reduction there. The reduction of a technology integrator, and when Christine Hessler comes, that's an elementary technology integrator. When Christine comes, she's going to talk about the impact of that. And that's the offset of the bar teaming coordinator. We're adding 1.57 kitchen staff. That's a couple different positions, and really what that goes to is month of January, kitchen did 45,000 meals. And what they're finding is that so many kids now are taking free lunch that they're not quite staying caught up. And we actually have the revenue generated for that program in order to be able to pay for that. There's about $300,000 in the budget, so 2/3 of a percent, 0.67, to account for a new main paid leave payroll tax. And then in addition, several years ago, I want to say it was probably 8 years ago, the district moved away from an insurance plan where we purchased laptop insurance and parents could buy a policy to a self-funded program. That program has reached a point where we have enough money set aside that we can cover the transfer that could possibly happen if that program ran short. So we are reducing that laptop repair transfer out of the budget so that we no longer have to worry about the board having to cover that should it be short. And that's funded entirely by parents who are purchasing laptop insurance. So broken keyboard, screen cracks, you name it, it's covered under that program. And right now it has enough money. The picture I included here, this was last year's Katahdin graduation. And I noticed on the news today, there was quite a discussion about Sanford and their alternative program and students who had that strong connection. One of the things that we've tried to do over the last several years, and you've supported as a board, is looking at pathways and alternative opportunities for students. Katahdin being not only a program recognized for what it does for the district, but recognized statewide for what it provides for services and supports for students. And in addition, they've been working strongly with Altitude at Wyndham Middle School and even looking at how that intersects with Jordan Small to meet the needs of students where, it's something a little different or a different pathway might be able to work. So there aren't any changes in the budget associated with that, but again, just a reminder of those supports. Also, just a reminder to the board and the public, we belong to the Greater Sebago Alliance. And for our $6,000 in membership dues, we get $119,775 back from the state of Maine to help with efficiencies. And that covers everything from shared professional development that we do. We do shared purchasing with them. Right now with Greater Sebago Alliance, we're looking at CDS services and how we possibly can share when pre-K special education services come on board, other different positions that we can share. But we've had Leadership Academy, we've had district coaching, done the shared purchasing, a lot of collaborative problem solving that has been done and has been worked through, and then also some recruitment for all those other support positions. Good evening, Grace. How are you?
Good.
So budget history. Give you an idea of where we've been over the last several years with our budgets. What is currently proposed, and again, reminder for the board and the public, this is February 28th, where we end on April 10th, probably won't be here. And this is a process and this is a journey, but gives you an idea of where we've been for percentage increases over the past several years and where we are for increase.
the pictures that I shared here, two things. First of all, on the basketball side, one of the most proud moments that I get walking into a high school is not necessarily what's happening on the court, but what happens up and is reflected on that wall, because that wall is voted on by coaches and by officials that are in our league. And it represents that not only are players good on the court or out in the field or in other places, but they're good citizens, and they treat their teammates and they treat their opponents well. And we've actually, I think now we've filled that wall. We're now working our way down the other side of a high school. It's a great testament to our kids and to our student athletes. And then our unified program, which is now expanded to unified bocce and looking at other unified sports that are available. Great way for our students to be able to be involved. The last unified game was actually a great student section that was there to come and cheer. And then on the right-hand side, that's Jess Weatherby. Jess was just voted the main school counselor of the year with our school resource officers, and looking at some of those not only the protections, but the supports that we provide for our kids. State subsidy pieces. Last year, we saw a $551,000 increase in state subsidy. And if you remember the last year, I think we received like a $300,000 bump, really when we were almost to the end of the budget process, which the board voted at that time to just use it to reduce taxation. It didn't increase the budget at all. This year, due to increased valuation and a reduction in special education costs, as well as a reduction in economically disadvantaged, we're seeing a $493,000 decrease in what we have available for state subsidy. So it's becoming recognized as wealthier communities, and then having some costs that were removed. So it does impact us as far as how it impacts taxation. And as we get further into the process, we'll start communicating how the proposed budget would do that. Just a couple of pictures that I chose. First of all, there aren't any costs associated with the new middle school in this budget. Okay, and I know the question's probably going to come up. Where are we with that? For the next 2 years, we are doing interest-free loans because we're paying them off with the interest that we're receiving with the way that we structured our school finance. So there aren't any expenses, and that's your new barn. It's down there on the right. But there aren't any expenses with the new school. You're not going to see expenses with the school until the end of next budget year. November of 25, we're getting an interest payment. So nothing there. And then on the left-hand side, a great example when we had those October days, and I know everyone was kind of wondering what's happening. We all kind of felt a personal connection to Lewiston. And again, just showing, the quality of people that you hired in this district with our grounds crew decided they're going to do their own tribute. And this went national. They're painting on the High School Stadium field. But again, it was showing their support, their solidarity with the people of Lewiston as we all went through that tragedy back at the end of October. So lots of things going on, lots of project pieces that are happening, but we are seeing a reduction in subsidy. The other thing I should also remind everyone is that when we start to see those interest payments coming on board, next budget, not this one, we're also going to see our subsidy start to tick up because there's an offset that's provided by the state of Maine, an additional subsidy to pay that. So our expenses, looking at the pie chart, where our greatest expenses is regular instruction. That's what happens in the classroom, day in, day out. The great people that you hire to go to work with our students every single day. That's where your 303 teachers and would be falling in that category, along with the special education there, which is roughly 18% of our budget. 13% is facilities maintenance. And as Bill will remind you when he comes and talks, we have over $200 million worth of assets and buildings. And they all have roofs, they all have walls, they all have kids that come in and out of them every day, and they all need repair, one time or the other. They all have to be heated. And I know, like Jody, with a recent natural gas bill, understanding that for a single month, it was $49,000 to keep our natural gas buildings. It's not an inexpensive thing to keep those things going. Transportation that's there, they do 660,000 miles a year here to Dallas every day. And then you can see the other categories of where we spend. Majority of our money, though, goes to supporting the needs of regular education students, special education students, and then keeping the buildings going where those students and our staff reside every day. And then budget revenues. We have to pay for all of this. And required EPS, that's money that the state of Maine says that you have to raise in order to be able to receive state subsidies. So it's roughly 42% of the budget. State subsidy is about 29%. And that local additional piece. And that goes to the cost sharing formula. And as we get further down the road with that budget, we'll have the opportunity to be able to dig in that a little deeper, how that all breaks out. I thought I'd end with this. It's kind of a fun moment the other night at the Civic Center, my nosebleed seat. I think the score at that time was 42-31. And when the boys had just come back from being down 12. And it was a great opportunity to see, first of all, a giant student section dressed in construction gear, because that was their theme for the night. But really a whole community coming together to support our student athletes that night. And not only for basketball, and that's the one I know that everyone's talking about at the moment, but for all the different other sports, activities, whether it be a unified game, whether it be the musical, the middle school musical. We have a Jordan Small Middle School musical that's going to be coming up, the 1X, all the different opportunities and things that you provide as a board to support our students. So it's going to be a process. The process starts tonight. And right now, all of you have your budget books. And they represent version 5. We'll continue to update as we went through the process. And again, for the community, version 5 will be posted to the website tomorrow morning, as well as this presentation will be put up if anyone wants to. So here we go.
Any questions? Go ahead, Mark.
Chris, can you just remind me one more time, or in the public also, because there had been some discussion about additional grounds people for Bill's department because of the new fields being at Manchester. I think that's put off till next year in his line, his budget line.
So we have a part-time grounds person that's in there, but that part-time grounds person is actually going to be paid for by the town of Wyndham. And so it's an offset, it's a direct offset for that particular position. Much like the town of Wyndham bills us for custodial services at the transportation facility, we'll be billing the town of Wyndham. And this is specifically to adding new fields at Manchester School that don't have a lot of grass on them right now, but hopefully will in the very near future, and to be able to start mowing those and start keeping those things up. So yes, that's in there, but there's a direct offset to the town.
Great, thanks.
Go ahead, Jody. I just had a comment, and I think it's important if someone doesn't have the documents in front of them. So you said about 1% is around 560,000. We're starting higher, 6.74, but just the EPS, the difference in the funding that we're getting accounts for a full percent. So we're behind a full percent before we even start essentially comparing. So I think that's important to point out that we're not increasing by a full percent before we move on from version 5. So if I understand that right, I just think that's important to acknowledge straight up from a funding perspective. So wherever we go from here, we can compare to last year, but when we're behind almost a full percent for funding, we really should compare that as a baseline when we finish. Go ahead, Char. No, okay. I have a question, or a couple of clarifying bits here. The increase in kitchen staff, my understanding of what you said is that Jeannie has the funds to cover that, yes? So even though that will be an increase in the final percentage of our budget, it doesn't actually hit the taxpayers because that's covered. All right. The other clarifying question I guess I had is you said a couple of times is that we have less economically disadvantaged students. But what I think I understand that to mean is we have less people who applied for and then were approved as economically disadvantaged. We don't necessarily have less of those students. Is that correct?
You have two things that are going on. One is when we did our, I think it's option 2 is what Jeannie's described to me. We're only collecting now economically disadvantaged every 4 years. And so the most recent collection was last year. And those numbers dropped from the previous year because they're always doing a 2-year average from the prior. So we saw a little drop there. In addition, over time, we have also seen in both communities a slight reduction in the number of economically disadvantaged. And that was trending even prior to COVID, that we were starting to see numbers drop because right now, and this is again, off the top of my head, and I give you the exact numbers, I think we're tracking somewhere 23% to 24% would then qualify economically disadvantaged. We used to be close to 40%. So we're also starting to see just a change in the community with the number of students who are qualifying.
Okay, so it wasn't just a figure of people don't have to apply to receive a free lunch anymore. There's actual change.
And some of that as well.
Okay.
And some of that as well, which also means that 2 years from now, when we do our next application process, which we need to go out to the community to really encourage people to complete those applications.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, next up is the presentation of the 24-25 school district calendar. In a minute.
Hey, in your packets in front of you, you have a draft of the RSU 14 school calendar. And just again, I want to talk about process because this was a law that came into play in the LePage administration, which was that school districts that send to a regional CTE center, so for us, it's Westbrook, cannot have more than 5 dissimilar days of instruction in any given calendar year. And Christine Hessler is our representative. She does it so well, but goes and meets with representatives from each of those different districts. And they look at the overall school calendar to make sure that we don't have those 5 dissimilar days. So this calendar, first of all, represents that. I think it was either 2 or 3 dissimilar days this year. So that's number one. Number two, which you'll notice different in the calendar, and I wish Pete was here, Hensler and Scott, because it was always their goal and their dream to have school start after Labor Day. In this calendar, school starts after Labor Day. So first day for students, grades 1 to 9 is September 3rd, which is right after Labor Day. Staff would be coming in, new staff orientation on Monday, the 26th, and then our big opening day with staff on August 29th. And even with that placed in there, last day of school is June 12th, and graduation is still falling at the appropriate time for us for our Civic Center slot for June 8th. So all of those things match up. The other big difference that's in here, and this is just through conversation with Ryan and Michelle, prior to being able to do some high quality remote instruction, it was always easier on election day. And especially this year with the presidential election, both schools' parking lots are going to be filled. There's going to be a tremendous amount of traffic. And even I remember the last big presidential election, I was principal of Wyndham High School, that front parking lot, back parking lot, the ring road was filled with cars as people were coming in to vote. So we're expecting 8,000 or 9,000 people at Wyndham High School who come in to vote. So the decision was made this year, though, instead of doing a no school day on those days, to do a remote day. Because it always made an interesting day that the high school was trying to make up, Jordan Small was trying to make up and trying to do some different calendar things. So with the remote. The other thing I should have mentioned in my soup report is that next Tuesday, Maine is going to have its first open primary that it's had, I think, in 20 years, is what the town clerks were telling me. And they're expecting an above average turnout for that election. And so Wyndham High School and Jordan Small will both have remote days, and there is a remote meal option for families that want to pick up a meal. But going back to the calendar, this is our 175 student days, 182 teachers days, starting after Labor Day, and then getting into June. And as someone reminded me today, if we continue to track the snowstorms, this may be the longest summer ever for kids because of last day of school being, I think, June 11th.
Questions? So just, I think this is a really small detail, but it's just a nomenclature comment on in the month of October and in the month of February. Is it possible just to fill in that blue spot where we have nothing beside the early release for Jordan Small Middle School and just make it blue with the same date, and then in December 11th as well? I know it's a small thing, but that caused some confusion with the fair amount of Raymond families this year. So thank you.
I think we could just go ahead and add that right to the same line because it's in the same pot.
I had a similar formatting suggestion maybe. So in blue are the holidays, and some of them say, for example, Veterans Day, no school, but then Memorial Day just says Memorial Day. So if we could either pick one where it all says just the holiday, or if it says the holiday and no school, that would make me happy.
Julie
Thank
noted.
Okay, we can move on to item 12. May I have a motion, please?
Okay, I move that the superintendent of schools, the superintendent, is authorized to accept a proposal of Androscoggin Bank, the bank, to provide tax exempt lease purchase financing for 4 years at an interest rate of up to 6.19% in the annual payment amount of $43,285.70 for electrical equipment and materials, the equipment, in the principal amount of up to $157,838.
Second.
Thank you. Public comment or discussion?
I think Bill is here, and if Bill could just take a minute. This is the Raymond Elementary School electrical upgrade, and is an absolute necessary step before we can bring HVAC into that building. But Bill, if you want to go ahead, you have to turn the mic on.
Is it on? On? Yeah. Now it's on. There we go. Okay. So, yes, this is the equipment we need to buy. As you remember, we spent a fair amount of money with CMP to bring the power to the building. Next step is actually to build the space and the equipment inside it so we can convert that power to what we need for the building. So this purchase is for all the equipment that we need to make this all happen. It has about a 42 to 45 week delivery. So this is for installation next summer. It's not for this summer. And that's actually pretty good because the first year I was looking at it was around 84 week delivery. So yeah, that's where we're at. So what this is a switch gear, which is basically big switches, transformers, the things that we need to be installed in the building to provide both the 480 volt power to the new equipment we're going to be buying, as well as the power the existing equipment we have, which would run on 208 single phase. So that's how it's all going to happen. So this lease is really important. This next step. The upgrade to electrical at Raymond School, when you look at the cost of CMP and this and the building we need to be able to house us all in it, and also the facilities committee, is it expensive? We're going to be spending a little around $800,000 in total to make that all happen. That's just giving us the power we need for the next step, which is with the HVAC. So this summer, there won't be a lot going on there. Next summer will be very busy because the plan would be that that's when we will go to install HVAC and upgrade it during the summer. So it'll be a very busy summer next summer. This summer will be quiet. This summer we'll be focused on site work, all that, preparing for this new building to go in. The building is an addition off the loading dock. And it's being designed to create something in there, so I think we'd be pleased with what's all done. So with that, I'll answer any questions.
Not a question. I want to thank you on behalf of every employee that works at RES.
I just have a question about the up to part of the interest rate. Can you just help me understand the up to 6.19?
The interest rate is 6.19. This was the attorney's motion. And so if something were to happen in closing and it were to drop, but we're authorized to do up to 6.19%.
And I'm going to ask the obvious related question that we shopped that rate, yes? That was the
Yes.
best we could do?
That's the best we could do, and that went out to bid. Just also for the board to know is that one thing that did impact our rate by just a very, very small, it's actually like 0.1%, was that we're going to be securing over $10 million worth of financing this year for our middle school project. And so that it does impact interest rate. Finance committee might be something that you want to kind of put in the back of your head, because when we have conversation in the year, are there any leases that we want to be able to pay down? This might be one that we want to take a look at first, given the interest rate, because it would be paying something at 6.1% as an opportunity. But yes, this was sent out to all the different banks, and this was the best of what we received.
You ready to vote? Okay, all those in favor? Motion carries. May I have a motion?
I move that the resolution entitled Resolution to Authorize Lease Purchase of Electrical Equipment and Materials for Electrical Upgrade Project at Raymond Elementary School in the principal amount, excuse me, of $157,838 be adopted in the form presented to this meeting.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor? I'm sorry. Public comment on the motion. Okay, board discussion. All those in favor? Motion carries. Okay, next up, we have a number of policies. I want to take, just prior to reading any of the motions, I just want to share for the IJJ policies, the full board had the opportunity to take a look at the IJJ policies at a public workshop on February 7th. Jody gave an excellent presentation on how and why we have arrived at the policies that we're at today. Tonight is our second opportunity as a board to discuss them, and we'll have at least one more opportunity during the second read. And we can get into discussion a little more as we go through each one. So can I have a motion on the first one, please?
I move to approve the first reading of policy IJJL, library material selection.
Second.
Thank you. Public comment? Or discussion? All right, so I'll just, go ahead, Margie.
Just one comment, and I know Jody said it before to the public, there is a lot of time, a lot of effort. I want to thank the board members that are on the policy committee, plus all of the other individuals who were invited into those meetings for their input. There was hours and hours. There's a lot of thought, especially knowing some of the people that were on that committee. So I want to thank you all very much. I think it's great. Good job.
I just want to echo what Marge said. Thank you very much to the people who put so much time and effort. I'm sure it was a very difficult procedure, and thank you very much.
I think I would just share publicly too, if you didn't have a chance to speak to a board member about the workshop, it was, I think, 55 or 57 hours of time on these two policies. So I hope that when we start to use them, and as we work through the process of looking at materials in curriculum and library, that they're working well for the staff, and that that we'll get some good feedback. So I just want to add those two things. And certainly if anyone and the public is interested in getting more detail or granularity about the policies, the process, then they can reach out to our policy committee. There's contact information online, and we certainly would be happy to speak with anyone up to any level of detail that they're interested in terms of the process and any changes. And we did go through that in our workshop earlier in the month, as Christina noted. You ready to vote? All those in favor? Motion carries. Can I have another motion, please?
I move to approve the first reading of IJJLR, Library Material Selection Procedure.
Second. Thank you. Public comment? Or discussion? So I was just going to clarify, so the IJJLR is something that we added that the function of which we felt strongly just provided a kind of a high level oversight that was important in the process, so that if any time, maybe contentious material comes in, it at least has an administrative look at it. Doesn't mean it's going to be purchased or not purchased, but just so that we're really well aware of what's coming in. And that was a large part of why this was added. So this is a regulation that gets voted on, can't be changed without board action, where some other things that you'll see tonight are exhibits that we will not vote on that can be changed. But this is one that's going to stay put unless we make changes to it. So, anyone else? Okay, all those in favor? Motion carries. All right. Next up, a presentation of IJJLE, Citizens Reconsideration of Library Material Reform. Jody? Sure. So the exhibit for this policy, this is the library policy. So you're pulling IJJLE, which would be looking like the previous challenge form. Yep, that's it. So Citizens Reconsideration Library Material Form, one of the yellow documents. And quick top line, the exhibits can be changed at any point as they need to be by our administrative team. The purpose of this exhibit is to replace the current IJJE, which is our Citizens Challenge of Educational Media Form. The new proposed would replace that document specific to the library policy that it belongs to. Notable in this particular exhibit, they're identical for the curriculum in the library, with the exception of how a student's parent or guardian would ask for materials to be accepted. So in the library policy, the exhibit that goes along with this policy would outline, the policy does say that if you want to restrict student access to library materials in the IJJL policy, you can go ahead and use that opt-out option. So the policy outlines the opt-out option for a parent to contact the school if they do not wish their student to access materials within the library. The exhibit in and of itself is used in the case where an individual would want to submit as a complainant for it to be removed for all students in the district. And so note the title change, instead of it being a challenge form, we've called it a reconsideration form. And so again, I would just say that if they get beyond step 4 in the procedure outlined in the policy, that means that they want to continue as a complainant to submit this form, that they would like it to be reconsidered for all students in the district. Questions? Okay, we can move on. Can I have another motion, please?
I move to approve the first reading of policy IJJC, instructional materials selection.
Second.
Thank you. Public comment or discussion? Okay, so this was just the curriculum specific version, we felt really strongly right from the beginning that curriculum materials and library materials were not the same. They should be handled separately. So this is our where we arrived at that. Anything else? Okay. All those in favor? Thank you. Motion carries. Next up, a presentation of IJJCE instructional material selection form. You touched on this a little bit already, but did you want to add? Yeah, sure. I'll just give another top line on this. Again, this is an exhibit specific to IJJC, to the curriculum policy. And essentially, I just want to point out again that it replaces the IJJE, that Citizens Challenge of Educational and Media form that currently exists. And we're proposing to have this exhibit specific to the curriculum policy for materials. This form would not be used for someone who wants to make an exception for their specific student to a material. That would still follow board policy IMBB, accommodation of sincere beliefs in required instruction. This form would only be used, again, if they got past step number 3 and wanted to proceed into step number 4 in the procedure outlined in IJJC, such that they would like it to be considered for removal for all students in the district. So each of these policies does have an exhibit, and these are the forms that are used for that process. Questions? Okay, moving on to the next motion, please.
I move to approve the first reading of policy JICK, bullying and cyberbullying prevention in schools.
Second.
Thank you. Public comment? Or discussion? Go ahead, Marcia.
Again, sorry. Thanks for all the work you did on this. I think it's great. I like the policy. I like the way it reads. The only thing that concerns me about the policy is the implementation of it. Being sure, how are we ensure that it's being implemented equally within the district and all of the schools? I know what the procedure is. I know some things have taken place in some schools. I'm very familiar with what goes on in the Wyndham Middle School, and I think that has cut back a lot of some of the things that are going on there, the investigation plus programs, educational stuff. So at some point in time, I think it would be great if when each of the schools comes before us, if that was part of their presentation, not during the budget, comes before us, part of their presentation is, this is how we in our school are addressing because I know there's a lot of alternatives in this policy that allow them to do different things, but I would like to hear how they're doing it. Because I know, it's not a thing of, it's kind of like the students get the same speech and next time the same speech. So that's all, just like.
Just want to also add, I mean, our SU 14 has had a JICK policy forever.
Yeah.
And the policy used to be an all-encompassing policy that included harassment, sexual harassment, and hazing, as well as bullying and cyberbullying. And there was a movement legislatively several years ago to move hazing to be its own policy, and policy committees take a look at that. In addition, policies ACAA, ACAAR, ACAB, and ACABR were also kind of pulled off, and that dealt with Maine Human Rights Act, protected classes, and the harassment portion. And the kind of the last step that RSU 14 never did was to go back to JICK and to clean up some of the language that was there to represent the different policies. There are, then we're going to look at E1, E2, E3, the reporting forms. Those forms are on our website. They have been on our website for a number of years. But absolutely, bring people's awareness back to them. And I know when Christine's working with buildings on bullying investigations and other things there, she's directing them to use those forms and making sure that we're there. They've never left the website. They're there under parents, and I think they're also there under the bullying. But this is really kind of 3 different policies that were created out of one parent policy. And I think JIC has been around since 2010, 12, somewhere in there. So for quite a while. So kind of separating out all those different ones. And I'm trying to remember if we don't have, maybe we do have hazing on tonight, but we won't be hazing.
Do you want me to go through the exhibits? Is that? No, we're still on the policy. So did you have anything to add or no? No, I think Chris did a great job. Just, it's important that I think the team understands it's a complex issue. Multiple board members asked this year for us to look at how bullying is addressed. And certainly it's a complex process. The Maine Department of Education outlined a very specific process and certainly want to follow that from a policy perspective. But there's a policy, a regulation, and then 3 specific exhibits. And certainly looking at discussions with a team and presentations, how it feels and how it works, our policy has to be up to date. So this was certainly the first step to make sure that this documentation was up to date. So then it can then work for a while to get feedback. So I appreciate your comment. I think it's more than fair. But at least we know this documentation, which is lengthy, is up to date. And then we can change it if it needs to. Anyone else? Okay, all those in favor? Thank you. Motion carries. Next motion, please.
I move to approve the first reading of policy JICKR, bullying and cyberbullying administrative procedure.
Second.
Thank you. Public comment or discussion? Okay. All those in favor? Okay, next presentation of JICK E1 bullying and cyberbullying reporting form. Okay, so when we look at the policy itself and then the regulation, of course, we understand is sort of the how of what the policy outlines. And so these reporting forms do follow the process that's outlined in the policy. So the policy itself has several sections. So I'm going to run through those just to give you a sense of walking through. The policy has an introduction course. It has prohibitive behavior outlined. It has the definitions of what bullying and cyberbullying are, which is important. Again, remember what Mr. Howell said, we're pulling out hazing, we're pulling out all the references to sexual harassment. We're relying on those 8 policies to deal with that. And then it walks into at the application of the policy. There's literally a category in that policy that says application of the policy. So this is really prescriptive in terms of how a policy normally isn't, as it's more general, but this one is very specific. And then it comes into this reporting, responding, and remediation section in the main policy itself. And so the reporting portion is that E1 document, and it's pretty straightforward. If you had any questions on it, certainly, but again, these are Maine Department of Education samples that were checked against our current documentation that our administration reviewed and provided feedback to the policy committee on. They were happy with a couple things, not only that they're up to date, but the language is consistent between the policy and the exhibits. And that's not always the easiest thing to do. There's generally a lot of work that has to go in to try to match an exhibit and a regulation with the language of the policy. So this came as one package. So again, you think about the policy walking through the prohibited behavior, how it's defined, and then the reporting, which is that E1 form that you have in front of you. Questions? Okay, moving on to JCKE2, bullying and cyberbullying responding form. So then after an incident is reported, the next exhibit is on the response. So it's similar, but a little bit different. Essentially, the administration then would take the report and respond. And this is the form that's used to make that response. And the nomenclature is E2 within the policy, and you see it there in front of you. Questions? Okay, moving on to JICKE3. And then finally, in the process, walking through this bullying and cyberbullying policy, we have remediation. So the process of what was the choice in terms of the intervention that was used for that student and the action and the individuals involved. And so that remediation exhibit is reflected in front of you with it's pretty clear in terms of closing the loop all the way around on a bullying event. I'm only going to add that we did send these to the administrators who would be using these policies for these forms for their feedback. And one of them had pointed out in the alternative discipline intervention, this counseling, anger management, health counseling or intervention, mental health counseling are all kind of the same thing, right? It's counseling, but this comes straight out of statute. So that's why it's there. We opted not to change that because it was very specifically spelled out in the law. So if your question is why are those different? Well, that's how it was written. That was my only addition to that. Any further questions? Okay, we will move on to ACAD hazing. May I have a motion, please?
I move to approve the first reading of policy ACAD hazing.
Second.
Thank you. Public comment? Board discussion? I would just make a couple of comments if I can. This content is more brief, but was just in the policy we just discussed. And again, want to just point out that we pulled out any language for hazing from that policy and created ACAD and used the MSMA sample to do that. Of course, we did a review and a markup and some surrounding samples, looked at the cross references, but as an individual policy, this particular behavior can be addressed solely without the confusing or confounding factors of sexual harassment or some of the other concerns with bullying or cyberbullying getting involved. Anyone else? All those in favor? Motion carries. Okay, last up, executive session. May I have a motion, please?
I move to enter into executive session to discuss the acquisition of property with the RSU 14 board pursuant to 1 MRSA subsection 4056C and not return to regular meeting.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor? Motion carries. We will see everyone next week.